Welcome to Ulua. You live, you work, you art.
Hi everyone, here I am again, Caro from Ulua, with a new guest. He is Joerg Sauer. I met Joerg during my stay in Indonesia, and we worked together in the transformation of a company, a great insurance company. We actually mentioned it, so I will say it, Allianz in Jakarta. And we worked together mostly with the IT team with him, and I also work with business teams and other things at the time. And when I met Joerg, we actually worked together. For example, when I would replace him, given some what we call it, or what is called in some other parts of the world, like brown bag meetings or lunch sessions regarding, for example, for management. And we did so many things together. We developed workshops and whatnot in that place. But now we are going to talk about, we will mention this time maybe, but we will talk more about his career, which has moved into being a full-time coach now. And I know he's working with executives to help them be the ones move their organizations toward those changes that as we did in that company previously. But also, and this is something I didn't know about Joerg, and I actually, during the interview, I found out that he's also working at the same time with people that are trying to get a better experience at dating, for example, and also at making their relationship work. So we will be talking about many things, also about nowadays events in the world and how things are changing. So keep tuned so you can understand more what's going on in Indonesia and also in other parts of the world, as we will be talking about. And thank you very much for being here, and please watch the full interview. Bye bye. Hello everyone, this is Caro from Ulua. I'm with Joerg here. He's living in Indonesia right now. He's from Germany. You came from Germany how many years ago? Well, now you will introduce yourself and then tell us who you are, how you ended up living in Indonesia, and your career path, if you want. Anything you would like to share with the people here.
Okay, how much time do we have? So good morning. So I think we leave it to the conversation, but yeah, good morning everybody. Yeah, my name is Joerg. I'm living in Indonesia. Second time already. So in total it will be 20 years in April. So first time was 2003 to 2008 in Bandung, and now since 2011 I am living in Jakarta. So yeah, who am I? I'm a German. I had a IT background, so that's where Carolina and I met in agile transformation, and I was working in an engineering team at the time. So I had a career in IT, 20-year freelance, then 12 years in the corporate world, insurance, multinational insurance companies. And 2 years back, so basically at the beginning of 2024, I left my corporate role after 1 year preparing for a transition. And now I'm working as a coach. And I have 2 focus areas. I just put it on the table, so if there is something of interest to discuss. So first I work with executive leaders or senior leaders, where predominantly those who are feeling some pain or struggling, right? So things are not working anymore, and then how to make things work again, and maybe also get some clarity and grow, because often what I see is not about doing more, because most people think, oh, something's not working, I need to do more. So how I phrase it is, what if doing more is not the solution, but becoming more is? So I work with leaders to do that. Then I support organizations in their transformations, but I'm focusing on the people side. So I'm working on the humans, on the communication, on the collaboration, because what I've seen in all the transformations or all the big projects I've been working on, the technology you can solve, the process related issues you can solve. What makes it difficult is culture, organizational culture, and then the people side. And that's also where I believe that it's very important to focus on in order to have sustainable transformations and not just deliver something and everything goes back to normal or to the time before. And then the other area, so that's basically the corporate and business professional side, which is related to my career, where I'm focusing on as a coach. And then based on my personal experience, getting separated from my ex-wife, and then at some point getting divorced, and then stepping back into the dating space to find love and happiness. I realized that there is so much suffering in that space. So a dating world is all crazy, and here in Indonesia, predominantly there is also a lot of pressure for singles over 30. Hey, why you're not getting married? What's wrong with you? It's from friends and from family, which puts up a huge amount of stress on individuals. They see themselves as a failure because they don't have a spouse or a partner, not a relationship, or they always get into relationships that's not working out. And then there is a huge proportion of divorced women here in Indonesia, and they are highly stigmatized. So I'm also coaching in the relationship space, working with singles over 30 and predominantly divorced women in order to find love and happiness.
Wow, interesting work you're doing there. I didn't know about the dating part of your work. I only knew about corporations and coaching executives and all that. So if you had to compare these two different worlds that are apparently different, I don't know, maybe in the coaching sessions, you end up finding some patterns in both cases, or they are completely different. How is that?
No, I think so. Meaning, yeah, they might sound completely unrelated. So for me, there's a couple of combining factors, right, or similarities. So first of all, I said, right, so I'm drawn to people who suffer in a certain way, but not suffering from, it's always thinking about the past and then you need therapy. And because I'm not a therapist, so I don't do counseling. Coaching is staying and looking at what is in the present moment, and then how you can get there where you want to get in the future, right? Whereas therapy is, there is something troublesome which happened in the past, and in order to be able to navigate that, you need to resolve that so that you can function in the present. So just as a distinction, because many people don't know what the difference is between coaching and therapy. So now when I'm saying they have pain, it means that people feel heavy, they are stressed, they maybe stop believing in themselves. They don't feel seen or appreciated. They think they are doing the effort, but the others are not contributing or playing along. And so that's a common theme of the people I predominantly work with. And it can also be organizations, right? If you want to be successful as an organization and you try A, B, C, and D and it never works, or right, so I always use the analogy of sand in a gearbox. If you have too much sand in the gearbox, it starts grinding and it's also not fun. Yeah. So that's maybe one similarity between the two areas. And the other thing is that what gets into your way, both on the relationship side, there it's obvious, right? And often or many times also in the organization is the relationships, right? So how do you have a relationship, right? And how do you navigate your needs and expectations versus the other person's needs and expectations? and then that relates then to the things you can communicate, or the conversations you are having and the conversations you are avoiding, and maybe the challenges and the conflicts which arise out of that, right? So because when you look into romantic relationships, at the beginning is all happiness, and at some point something happens and you drift apart, and often is about maybe behavior, but it's most times also not talking about that. So meaning, what turns you off? What do you find odd? And on the business side, it's the same thing. How can I speak up? So if my boss is treating me in a certain way, how can I have a conversation about that? Or what am I doing? Right, the subtle clues. It's not always on the verbal side. Is, in a meeting, somebody shares something and you roll your eyes, and that has an impact, right? Because people notice, right? You might not notice that you roll your eyes, right? But somebody notices, and that changes the energy. And if that happens too long, then it can become emotional, right? So basically, you go into the meeting already with the anticipation that will be this,
always the same.
And he will be rolling his eyes, and better I keep my mouth shut, or whatever, right? And that's the same thing on both sides. It's different context, but it's often about what you are aware about, your emotion, what triggers you, what is difficult for you to do, what is easy, what do you believe you can do, right? Because often we all have beliefs, and some of them are helpful and some of them are maybe limiting, and then we have all been conditioned, right? So meaning we experience how our parents treated us, how we were in school, what our first work experiences were, at university or whatever, how we got educated, right? That shapes us. And then we develop strategies to navigate whatever challenges or circumstances are thrown at us. And then that makes us survive, right? Because we keep moving on and we find our solutions. And at some point, they don't work anymore, right? Because what serves us, what brought us here, doesn't bring us there. And that's on both sides. And in this regard, coaching is universal, and I don't see much of a difference between the two sets of clients, so to say, or the two groups of clients, so to say.
Yes, it makes sense to me, because when you are at a certain point of expertise working with companies and working, in the end, it's people everywhere, so you're just working with people. Yeah, so I always say that when they ask me what's the worst, or not the worst, but the most difficult problems you have had in companies, and I say the conflict between people is the thing that you have always to address first, because everything else can be solved with a tool or with other things, but people have to be guided. But that's the thing you have to work on, I think.
Yeah, that was also that's also your role as an agile coach, right? So when you when you have the team there and there is this let's say daily stand up, and at the beginning everybody is, when agile is new, agile is cool, right? So you have the daily stand up for the first times, and yes, there are some things which are maybe not perfect or not according to what it should be, but then you guide them, and then the team is getting better. And at some point it becomes routine, and then it's kind of dragging, and then the people become whatever complacent, and then maybe somebody feels, hey, we're just going through the motions, but we are not living the principles, right? But nobody talks about it, right? And then as a coach, you surface that.
And what I've seen in my experience, maybe you can confirm this or not, or compare with Germany also. What I've seen, for example, here in Argentina, people there are some teams where people don't speak up, but there are others where they speak up too much about the things and the conflicts, and everything is brought up to light. But what I've seen in Indonesia is that people don't speak up in general. It's like a cultural thing, right? Or has it changed since I was there in 2019?
So yes, of course. Why I'm holding back is because is many things we can talk about here in to respond or to answer your question. So yes, right. Southeast Asia is you avoid conflict, yeah, and you don't bring bad news. And saying no is already bad news. If somebody asks you something, you should say yes. And so the funny thing for those who haven't been to Asia or to Indonesia yet is, right, so when you come here as a foreigner and you do some intercultural training and maybe also some language training, right, the first thing people tell you, or at least I was told, is if you have to ask for the way, right, don't ask, is this road going to Bogor, which is another city, right? So you don't ask, is this road going to the city? Because if it's not going to the city, people have to say no. And saying no is kind of making you unhappy, right? And it has happened to me, right? Even after years, I was on a cycling tour, and I by myself in the pandemic, and then I was turning left, and I thought, should I turn left or should I turn right? And I wasn't sure. And then I asked somebody, is this the road to? And then the person said yes. And then I continued, and then after 500 meters, I thought, no, it cannot be the right direction, right? And I checked my GPS, and yes, I was in the wrong direction, right? So what you need to ask is, where is this road heading to? And then they tell you, oh, this road is heading to whatever, right? And you know, okay. And so this is maybe an extreme example, but what people already consider bad news, right? And you don't deliver bad news normally. The other thing is that you don't confront people, right? So because when you confront somebody, it's here we have the concept of losing face. Yeah, basically you're losing your face, and that has been a big thing historically, right? So if you lose your face too much, you may be even expelled from your community, or right, become an outcast, something like that. So depending on Indonesia is different variations of that, because in Indonesia we also have 300 different tribes and 900 languages. So, and each have their own kind of specialties, right? So when you, for example, talk to somebody from North Sumatra, Batak, they are really outspoken and direct. Whereas when you go to Java, to Central Java, very, very low voice and walking slowly and very friendly, and you never speak up, right? So, yes, you need to navigate that. Yeah. But it's also, everybody is different, right? So you have in every culture, you have then people who are more outspoken or more silent, right? And for me, that's something you need to know. Yeah. And what is a conflict, what I perceive as a conflict versus a debate, versus a healthy debate, right? As a German is of course different than for an Indonesian. Yeah. So meaning when I'm talking to my German friends and we are disagreeing, it's right. So we disagree. Yeah. And then the Indonesian would observing us would say, hey, they're having a fight. I said, no, we are just having a fun debate, right? Actually, I am enjoying this conversation, right? How can you enjoy that? You are so aggressive. No, it's just, how we talk, right? And then for the foreigner here, then, they are observing the Indonesian conversation, saying, oh, it's going nowhere, right? And nobody is committing on anything, right? And you are so, what are you doing? And you're wasting time. And
yeah.
So
it was a little bit trying for me, I must say. Yes, I must confess.
But fundamentally, maybe because you brought up the aspect of conflict. So what I have realized during my time in Indonesia, and also now working with people as a coach, is that what triggers us, or what we perceive as a conflict, is individual. But once we are in a conflict, so once we perceive something as a conflict, the mechanisms are the same. So basically, once you are triggered, right, then your reptile brain, amygdala, takes over, disconnects the neocortex, and then you cannot listen, you cannot, right? So that's so the threshold of being triggered is different.
Yeah.
But everybody has that, right? Because right, I'm assuming you in a certain context are more easily triggered than in a different context.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. But once you are triggered, it's all the same,
There's
right?
no stopping.
So yeah, you either fight or you run away, or fight, flight, freeze, or play dead, right? So that's 4 responses we have, and whatever your default response is, that you are triggered, you do that. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
And then the way of resolving that, and the mental or the emotional load is then similar.
Yes. Yes. In the end, we are all human. As you said, we have different thresholds, but yes.
Yes. And I think that's a very important statement, that we are all human, and it's and then we, of course, we know that, but we are not necessarily acting in that way in our daily interactions, because we maybe focus on the differences more than on what we have in common. Our brain is a judgment machine, so is always, because, right, so you need to make decisions, so you judge the situation, right, or you judge people. So the more we are judgmental, the more we tend to create situations which are maybe not beneficial, right, in regards to what we want to achieve, or how we can live together, how we can work together, how we can support each other.
Yes. Yes, and I think what we've been talking about applies to any relationship. As you said, you can find the patterns between dating and also organizations. It's kind of, there are similar behaviors, as there are humans involved. Yes. And now that we are talking about humans, I will address the topic we were just mentioning at the beginning before we started recording, about the situation of the world. I didn't know if I wanted to address this, but now that we are talking about humans, I think it's part of our human state or our human way of living, or our human nature, the way of conflict, but sometimes with countries, and sometimes with but polarizing ideas and those kind of things. That's also human, I think. Yeah, I don't know if you want to tell me a little bit, because you asked me first when we started having a conversation how this global situation right now applied to Argentina, or was influencing Argentina, and where I live. And yes, here in my country, I said it's always a mess. There's always a mess. The economic situation is always, sometimes we are a little bit up or down, but we are always cycling and spiraling. It's a mess always. But at the same time, globally now, I think it's more complicated. Right?
Yeah. So so what I've experienced is a sensitive topic, and is something which sadly leads to quite a few things. Maybe I need to explore. Maybe I need to elaborate on that one a little bit longer, right? So
If you want, we can talk about it.
I find that very important, and I have been talking about it, and I've also shared some Instagram and YouTube so Instagram and LinkedIn posts on that topic, right? Because I think it's fundamentally it's very essential, right? So I strongly believe that humans are better could be doing better than we do, right? So meaning, if I just look at myself, so I grew up in Germany, and at some point I met my ex-wife, and she was or is a textile engineer, and she was working in Asia as a textile engineer, but always just flying there, doing some work and coming back, right? And at some point she got tired of that and said, I want to live where I work. And me being freelance IT, I thought, okay, let's go there, right? So that was how I came to Indonesia. It wasn't just I fell in love with Indonesia. I was just saying, I'm flexible, I'm open, and so life circumstances brought me here. So now I am coming, right, as a white male, middle class, whatever person, right, to Indonesia as a migrant worker. Yeah, as a migrant worker. So I'm the traveling spouse because my ex-wife has a job, right? But pretty quickly I'm also getting a job. And despite the history of Indonesia being colonized and suppressed for centuries, right, by various countries, right? I'm always, if I'm confronted with racism, put it like this, right, to put the word on the table, it's kind of positive racism, right? So meaning here in Indonesia, I've always been welcome. So hi, mister, hello, right? So people look up to you because for whatever reason, right? Not
they want to take a selfie with you all the time.
Not because who I am as a person, but there is maybe a conception. Oh, yeah, they know more, or they whatever, right? So, so moving here for me was pretty easy, yeah. And I am coming with a solid. So I grew up in an environment, right, where I was just lucky, right? So I was born into a family, middle class, upper middle class. I got the education. And I'm a man, so things have been easy. Now I'm coming to Indonesia, which is considered a developing country or a tiger state or whatever you call it, right? But it's definitely behind, and with a huge population, so 80 million people, right? Which don't have the same possibilities, right?
Yes.
Just because out of chance, right? Because who you are born into decides certain to a great extent your springboard, right? And how life will look, what kind of possibilities or opportunities you have, at least from an educational, maybe healthcare and financial perspective, right? So when you live there, of course, you see the good things, and you also see the ugly things, and that makes you think. And so when I took my first job, I was working for a governmental institution, and I realized, and that was a great experience, because in governmental institutions 20 years back, people were still kind of living the way of working, the way of communicating with a very traditional Indonesian way. And so that was so foreign to me, and I couldn't. So meaning you have these meetings where first it starts at the lower ranks, and then once you achieve some outcomes, it goes to, you have meetings at the higher ranks, and then finally you have meetings where the decisions are being made. So it's dragging forever. And then in these meetings, one person, so the first person talks, which is the least senior one in the room. That, let's say the first person talks, says something. The next person repeats what they find important and relevant of the first person. They don't repeat what they don't like what the first person said, and they add what is important to them. And then, it goes through the whole round, and then maybe you do 1 or 2 rounds, and then you have a meeting result, which for a German is not necessarily a meeting result. And then it goes on, and at some point you have a decision, right? But basically that's quite interesting, because then you need to realize, okay, what are the dynamics, what are the social things, what are the norms, what is being said, what is not being said. So basically what is happening on the verbal side of communication, what is a non-verbal communication. And then you learn a lot about people, right? And then on the face is always poker face, so smiling, right? So when people come to Indonesia saying, hey, it's always the friendly people. And yes, on the surface, everybody's friendly, right? But because that's what expected from you. But then you hit the road. So basically in your work context, in your neighborhood context, in your family context, everybody is behaving as expected. But then everybody hits the road, and then there's craziness, because here right? So you can finally you can be yourself, and you can maybe get something, right? Which in the other context you can't, because of the rules and regulations, right? And anyway, so coming back to the question of conflict and humans, right? So that made me realize, hey, what do we maybe have in common? What is maybe your motivation? What are your needs? And how can we become maybe more happy, right? And then what I realized about myself in Indonesia, when you move, I don't know, you also moved here, right? And so you have the experience of moving out from your known environment into a new environment, right? So we all go. So what happens normally is you go through some cycle, right? So at the beginning, is honeymoon phase, or everything is great, right? The food is great, the weather is nice, or whatever it is, right? So the difference, right? So exotic one, and at some point you start realizing, oh, it's not all perfect, right? So the traffic is shitty, and the pollution is there, and then nobody makes decisions, and nobody says yes or no, right? So meaning whatever it is, right?
Yes.
And at some point you get frustrated about it, right? Because now it's kind of, it doesn't work as, right? So you start comparing, here is great, and there is, and then you become critic, and then you get frustrated. So, and what I've realized about myself, and in maybe general, after 5 years being in Indonesia and then moving back to Germany, so 5 years here, going through this kind of cycle, and then at some point making peace with certain things and just trying to arrange the things which annoy you, right? I realized 2 things. First of all, and I now put it from the frustration perspective, the amount of frustration you have, or the level of frustration you have, is kind of a constant. So basically, if I am, let's say, 30% frustrated in my life, it doesn't matter where I live, I'm 30% frustrated. What changes is what frustrates me. In Germany, it frustrates me that when I'm on my mobile phone and I have internet and I'm in a car, every 5 seconds it's disconnected because there is no reception, right? I don't have that problem in Indonesia, right? So in Indonesia, the internet works, it doesn't drop, right? But in Germany, on a highway, in a city, on the train, always on off, right? That's an infrastructure problem we have there, right? So it's frustrating. What frustrates me what frustrates me in Jakarta is the traffic. In Germany, if you talk about the traffic jam in Germany, unless it's a severe kind of, right? But normally it's, I laugh about it. It's not a traffic jam. It's just kind of a small slowdown, right?
Yes.
So meaning here is a traffic. There is the internet, for example. So, but the level of frustration I have is constant, unless I work on myself to, shift from frustration to happiness, or from negativity to positivity, or whatever, right? But if I don't change my personality, the aspects of who define me are constant, right? It's just different things which trigger me, right? The other thing which I realized is that, and that's maybe related, is that in every area, in every country, or in every community, there are things which you like, and there are things which you struggle with. And because when you are living in an expat community, then people are, always critic about the locals, right? And I can imagine that's the same, right? So same foreigners in Argentina, they bitch and they just super frustrated about the Argentinians or Argentina as a country or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so the realization moving back to Germany after 5 years in Indonesia was that, how I frame it is, banana republic is everywhere. It's just different bananas, right?
Yes.
So meaning there is no perfect, and what you consider perfect is related to your personality. It's also related to taste and to the conditioning you experienced during your upbringing, right? So the rules, regulations, the experiences, the expectations. So meaning here in Indonesia, for example, I can live more freely than in Germany, because here everybody knows I'm a foreigner. Yes, I need to stick to certain rules and behave in certain ways. But if I don't, it's kind of accepted, right? Because I'm not an Indonesian. Nobody expects me to be Indonesian. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when I'm back in Germany, now I fly to Germany, everybody expects me to be German, right? And after 20 years abroad, things have changed in Germany. I don't know how to be a German anymore, right? Because what I remember is what a German was 15 or 20 years back.
Yes.
But culture changes. There is, right. So things are moving on, and you always see that in first generation migrants, they stick to the old traditions, and then at some point, the people are looking at them saying, "Hey, what happened to you?" Yeah, I preserved my way of living, what I know, because now I'm not here. I don't know what has been changing. Right?
Yes. Yes.
So. So now conflict, right? So you said, so now the conflict. So meaning realizing these things, right? I realized, for me also, working and wanting to get results, I need to change. So I need to be open to the other person rather than coming with my way. And I need to understand. So motivations, I need to understand their conditioning, their beliefs, because otherwise we cannot talk to each other. And what I'm concerned now, bringing it maybe to the global situation, is that polarization doesn't help, because when I'm looking through polarized views, right, it's always black and white, right or wrong,
Yes.
us or them, me versus you, and how can that help in order to live together? And I strongly believe that our most of the problems we are having are global problems. Yes, they might. So because what we see locally is then symptoms of global problems. So climate, for example, so meaning the weather is global. Yes, here is more rain, and there is maybe more storm or more drought, but it's all connected. We are now, with technology and all the things. So it's not like scavengers. So we are not roaming and doing hunting and scavenging, right? So we don't do that anymore. So we have global supply chains, and if something gets and if I need something, maybe it comes from South America, right? I found a love to coffee, so now I'm drinking coffee. So yeah, coffee beans are, I have some Colombian or whatever coffee, right? So if I want to have that coffee, it comes from South America. And then, so meaning, actually, when we look into food now, almost everything comes from South America, right? Potatoes, tomatoes, paprika, corn, and the list goes on and on and on, right? So
Yes.
if there would have been chilies and right? So if there would have been no South America, what would we eat globally, right? So meaning Germans wouldn't have potatoes, and so Germans are known for potatoes, but some 600 years back, no potatoes, right? We were eating grains and yeah. And here in Indonesia, all spicy. What would we do without a chili, right? So anyway, right? So meaning we have these dependencies, yet we try to look at it from a national or whatever perspective, but the problems we cannot solve, right? Because we have these dependencies, and so the world is resourceful, and why can't we change the resource? Why can't we share the resources?
Yeah.
So
now that you're mentioning this, it felt like if we weren't talking about global and we were talking about an organization, it's exactly the same. You change the world by organization, and it's exactly the same. About the dependencies, I mean, right? So yes, but in a bigger context. And
I don't know when you were around in shall we say the name of the company, or we keep it anonymous?
No problem if you can say.
When we working at Allianz, right? So we had this. The original setup was, okay, we have project managers, but project managers are in the project management office. And we were in IT, and somehow it didn't work. So we created our own project manager. We call them IT project managers, right? So, and then we were working, and it was all very well. And at some point, we changed the whole organizational kind of setup. So IT is not just a silo anymore, right? We need to collaborate with other departments, and that works well because you do the work. Everybody is working towards common goals. And then at some point you think, okay, why don't we still have IT project managers and then the business project managers, right? Because, right, so yes, there's maybe a focus more on the business language kind of side, and there's maybe more towards the IT way of language, and then different details or different aspects you discuss, right? So here's high-level business requirements, here's maybe technical requirements, right? But fundamentally, it's kind of right. So it's requirements, and then we talk here with this using this language, and we're talking down there or here using different terminology so that we understand each other, right? And then a project manager bridges that, and everything works fine. And then you think, okay, let's make a change. Just put all the project managers back into one pocket, right? So now we don't have IT project managers and business project managers anymore. We just have project managers. And they are sitting now, maybe not I don't know, I don't recall if it was then the project management office, but they were then sitting in a different department. So from today, so yesterday they were in IT, and today they are in operations. Yeah? So, and then within a very short time, their behavior changed. So they were coming to IT and saying, hey, before it was all collaborative and having conversations, right? And then at some point in no time it changed to be requests and demands. So, and there is a lot of research that structure changes behavior, right? Because now you are in this team against that team. And so if it shows in the small, in small organizations or in your neighborhood or whatever, right? Of course, it also shows on the larger scale. And then, and when it shows up, it can be addressed, right? Because you can have these retrospectives and reflect back or share back that the behavior changed because people don't necessarily do that intentionally, right? It's just something which happens subconsciously, and if you don't do anything about it, then you have the silos again, and then you have this us versus them.
Yes.
And that's where the communication comes, right? So have this retrospective, see, okay, what has changed? And the challenges, of course, are that we are working in a complex world, and so most of the problems we are facing are complex, and most of the areas we are working on, most of the things we are experiencing are systems which have interdependency, so it's complex systems, and cause and effect is not obvious, right? So in a complex system, I do something here, and then at some point in some location, something happens.
Yes, there are always unintended. They can be good, but sometimes they can be also bad consequences. I mean,
and then and because they are not directly related, you don't put it, you can link it back to the change you made here.
Yes.
Because you I don't know, in organizations I have seen it so many times. Somebody leaves the organization and then there's a replacement. And then the replacement has all the skills and capabilities. And then 6 months later, 1 year later, 2 years later, you realize something is broken in a completely different department. Yeah, why was that? Because the first person knew something and was having a relationship with somebody in the other department, which made it work.
Yeah.
Or who was doing something outside of the job description. Or was having a certain way of working, which which attracted somebody else, so that person could kind of bring some issues, and now with the new person doesn't bring the issues, right? And then 6 months, 1 year, 2 years later, you realize, oh, something is broken. And then you realize, oh, it was because 2 years somebody left the organization right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, as you said, there are so many factors that we have to live with. I mean, life is just like that, right? There are too many factors influencing different parts of our lives, our world, now globally, and it's getting much more complicated. We also have technology that's taken also a lot of a great part of our lives too. It's involved in our daily lives, so everything is getting to that point, and systems are really complex today.
And if we stop talking to each other, we will just we will make the problems bigger.
Yeah.
So meaning, example from Germany, right? When after the Second World War, right? So Germany was in rubble, right? And because of Marshall Plan and other things, right, we picked ourselves up, and whole Europe, right, picked themselves up, right? And then we had this kind of period where, you know, we have exceptional growth and building a strong economy, basically a phoenix from the ashes, right? So at that point, we were realizing, hey, we need people to work, right? So, and that's when we were getting the Turkish, the Portuguese, the Spanish people, Greek people, right? Migrant workers coming to Germany and work in factories, work in the mines, work in the steel industry, right? And doing that. And Polish workers, maybe before the Second World War, was Polish workers, right? In the steel industrialization, steel work, right? Steel and mining, right? So basically, for a certain period of time, we needed people, so we were a migrant work country. But we were selectively calling people in for certain, you know, jobs in automotive, in construction, in mining, in steel. And then, of course, we had the boomers, right? So the baby boomers, so a lot of population growth. And then at some point, it turned around. So meaning I'm not boomer, I'm Gen X, right? So I was already on the declining side. So meaning, since I am born 58 years back, right? It's a known fact that the population is decreasing. So that at some point we will have more people who are old than people which are young. And it's a given that unless the birth rates go up, right, we will have to think about our social systems like healthcare, pension, right? How to finance that? Because if less people are working, more people are on retirement, right? Then that needs to be addressed. It's also clear that if the population shrinks, right, and if the but we are on an economy which is on an economical system, right, or capitalism where everything is about growth. So we need people to take the jobs over from those who are retiring, right? And yes, there is automation, which maybe counters some of these effects, but literally for the last 58 years, right, and longer, we know we need to do something about it, right? Yet, when you look at politicians, right, they look into election cycles and, right? So it's about maybe 4 years focusing on how can I get reelected. So basically you leave it unattended. And then you also see nationalistic resentments like, okay, we are not a migrant country, right? So Germany was always saying we are not a migrant country. Yet, right, after the Second World War and also phases of industrialization, we got a lot of migrant workers in, right? And so that's why I think Turkish population in Germany is about 3.5 or 4 million people, right? Out of it's 5% or whatever. It's more than 5%, 8% or whatever, right? Turkish people. I don't know the Spanish, right? So we have a significant number of foreigners, and now second, third, fourth generation become German or dual citizens, things like that. So. And then you see advertisement. So you have these political campaigns. We are not a migrant country. Then after the Cold War ended, we expanded the European European Union to the east. So new countries getting benefits, they can work. So there was. I remember when I was in my late 1990s, early 2000s, right? There were advertisements. Oh, the Romanian will now come in and will take all our jobs, right? So the sentiment is there, or it's bad if they all come.
Yes.
So but then you go into a beer garden or into a restaurant, and who is serving you is somebody who is having a Eastern European accent, right? So you can tell, right? So basically people doing the jobs are already from these countries because we don't have enough, and then unemployment rate is really low, right? So basically you already it's obvious on the street, it's obvious that we need the people, but the political campaigns is we need to protect ourselves, right? Germany for Germany, right? So for Germans, something like that, right? So the nationalist kind of populist sentiments, right? The problem with that is that, right, it shapes the mindset of people. You start looking at others, right? And you don't realize, hey, by the way, our social welfare system depends on that we have a certain amount of people who work and get paid decent salaries, because then they pay decent taxes and fee and contribute to the social welfare system. Right, in an overaging country, we also need to make sure that if Germans are all kind of going into academia, because that's now the mindset. Okay, school, you don't do a vocational training. You all go to university. So now everybody goes to university, following an academic career. So who is doing the the vocational kind of things, right? So who is
Yes.
cooking, who is plumbing, who is fixing the roads, who is taking out the trash, right? So who is driving the bus, who is driving the truck? Yeah, and now today we are having a shortage of, I think, 30,000 truck drivers in Germany, and in the next 5 years, about 70,000 truck drivers will retire, and in the public transportation now is a lot of delays, and buses and trains cancelled because we don't have the drivers.
Wow.
And last year they were talking about bringing in drivers from Kenya, right? Because they have a surplus of drivers. But if you take all the drivers from Kenya, then Kenya doesn't have drivers anymore, right?
Yes.
It's the same with nurses. So everybody now is getting nurses from it started with the Philippines, now is Vietnam, Indonesia, for Europe, because we have a shortage of nurses. So why do we have a shortage of nurses? Maybe because they are not paid right. It has been an oversight, right? So have been underpaid. They have
Yes.
ridiculous working hours. So it's not advantageous to become a nurse, or not attractive to become a nurse in Germany. So that's why people look for other professions. In the pandemic, many nurses stopped working because they couldn't, because of almost breakdown of the healthcare system, right? And they didn't return when it now got better. So these are just examples where we need to work together, right? Because in Asia we have a surplus, because we have growth. In Indonesia, 280 people, birth rates are dropping, it's stabilizing, right? But it's still growing. The industry economy here is not growing at the speed that everybody will have a job. So meaning is an opportunity for, okay, we have a surplus here, then maybe find some jobs elsewhere.
Yes.
Yeah. But we make it impossible for people to roam the world because of borders, requirements, and just to stick with the nurses, the funny thing is that how it works is you don't get somebody with suitable high school whatever degree and then bring them over to Germany to be trained as a nurse and become a nurse. No. The expectation is that the nurse is being trained in Indonesia, then is being qualified as a nurse, right? Once they are trained, then they need to do some language training, that they speak German to a certain level, right? Then there are agencies who do all the paperwork, bringing them over. Then it takes up to 500 days for the German bureaucracy to approve the paperwork. So yeah, you are a qualified nurse. In the meantime, the person is already in Germany, changing bed sheets and serving food, and not working as a nurse because it's not approved yet, right? So, and what happens is we are putting the financial burden on training nurses to the country, to the originating country, so in Indonesia. So basically Indonesia needs to train nurses.
Yes.
Then once the nurse is trained, we just hijack them, right? We poach them. And then we also make it difficult for the nurse to work and whatever. And then the system is not ready for integration. And then they live in a bubble. And then it's kind of that causes all these other issues with integration versus, and then racism and the conflicts you see in the society.
Yes.
Rather than, talking, hey, here we have a surplus of people. In Africa, the same thing, right? So Africa is behind, is behind. So why don't we, what can we do in order to address that, right? And everybody benefits. But because when you look into history, global history, for centuries or millennia, people were roaming, right?
Yes, exactly.
So
the same happens here in Argentina. The same thing you were mentioning. For example, Now, in the past years, there have been scientists are leaving the country. Nurses are also leaving the country. Most of our nurses here, for example, or doctors are from Venezuela. Venezuela came here to live to Argentina due to their problem there. And they studied here, and they are better paid here than in other countries from Latin America, so they stay. But our doctors, I mean the Argentinian doctors, leave the country and they go live, for example, in Germany, in Spain, Europe mostly. So yes, everything is like roaming and changing.
Yeah, but it's not organized, right? So, and
No,
this
no,
is,
at all.
so it's all random and it's responsive, and you don't see the effects, and these are long-term effects, right? And now coming back to the
Yes.
to the organization side, is in the corporate world, at least in the Western world, and in publicly listed organizations, it's all short term because you focus on quarterly results.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and we have annual targets and goals. Where is a long term perspective? And change takes time. Building a team takes time. So, meaning knowing to dance, right? It takes time.
Mhm.
And you get better. And at some point you plateau, and then you need to think, okay, what do we need to change to reach the next level? And if we don't have that focus, and we only have the focus on short-term things, if we don't factor in opportunity costs and risks, right? So meaning, I'm always, so in the corporate world, I was always cynical. Yeah, I was cynical about risk management, right? Because especially in regulated industries like financial industry, right? You have the risk departments, right? And I was saying, guys, you're not. So when I look at our risk register, the real risks are not there. Yeah. So the real risk for an economy is that we don't have the people we need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right?
totally agree.
The risk is that we have. The risk is that we cling on industries which are doomed to die. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We hold on technology which is phasing out. We yes, no, in other aspects, right? So, and it's not easy. I understand that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So so we can talk about that for ages, but I don't think it doesn't get us anywhere.
Yes.
So I think so. Maybe coming back to our core point, right? Humans, right? So I think we need to be more compassionate, because we are fundamentally all the same, and meaning me living here with how many nationalities I'm interacting. Yeah. And is it a Russian? Is it an American? Is it a Ukrainian? Is it a Indonesian? Is it a Thai? Is it an Indian? Is it a German? Is it Spanish, French? You name it. Argentinian, North America. So whoever, right? African, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, you name it, Kenya. Right? They're all nice people. Yeah, all nice people. And yes, some maybe and some maybe but that's not because they are from a certain country. That's because they are who they are, and not everybody is for everybody, right? So I like certain people and I don't like other people, but it's the same for them, right? They like certain people and they don't like me, which is okay. But fundamentally, we can talk to each other. We don't have a problem with each other. So I think we need to focus on that. And when when I look into media and the languages which is being used, I think there is a lot of violent communication. There's a lot of polarizing and labeling communication. Yeah, and so meaning if you talk about your allies in friendly terms or neutral terms, and then you talk about the other party like a terrorist or the authoritarian or the dictator or the whatever,
Yeah.
right? So meaning, so why can't we just say Mr. Chancellor and Mr. President and not put some labeling term in front of that?
Hmm.
Because if I labeled somebody, I put him in a box, and there is a stereotypal thinking. And yes, maybe yeah. When somebody was treating me badly, yeah. When I talk to that person about that person with others, I don't say asshole Tom, right? I just Tom, right?
Hmm.
But when we look into print media, right, then it's asshole Tom said does this or did that or said this, right?
Yeah.
So we put that label there. When in our personal conversations, maybe we say, hey, he was really a jerk, right? But we don't label him jerk, or I don't say insecure Claudia or
Yeah.
joyful Barbara or
Hmm.
strong Peter, right? But in print
Yeah.
media, we always see that, and I think we need to be conscious about our language and be more, and that's something what I try to. So that's something which happens in coaching a lot. I play back to you the words and the language you are using, because there is always a meaning.
Yes.
There is always a meaning, and the meaning shapes the way you think. So the words you use shapes the way you think, and the way you think shapes the way you behave and act or not act. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if so, for example, I was coaching someone last year, and we were talking about mentors, right? So he wanted to find a mentor, right? And then in some session he said, I've already found 2 mentors. Cool. I said, oh, happy. Oh, cool. 2 people already agreed to mentor me. Good, right? And then in the next sentence he said, yeah, I'm greedy. And I was saying, oh, why are you greedy? Yeah, because now he's getting all the mentors, right? So he's using the language greedy. Yeah. So and then we had a conversation, and then it dawned on me, okay, so if I want to be mentored, right? If I have one mentor, it takes maybe, I don't know, 1 hour per month, right? So on the mentor side and on my side. If I have 2 mentors, right? It's 2 hours on my side and 1 hour on each mentor's side. So if I have 5 mentors, it's 5 hours of my time and only 1 hour of their time. So what is greedy here? Yeah, and of course you can say, oh, I'm taking all the mentors and then they don't have time to mentor somebody else. But it's their decision if they want to mentor you, and it's not you being greedy. Yeah. So maybe you are determined. So meaning what alternative word can we use, right? Maybe it's I'm determined because I want to grow and I want to achieve a certain goal. So now I'm looking, right? Or I'm whatever. Yeah. What word is it?
Yes.
Which is serving you? Because if you feel you are greedy, it induces shame and guilt, and it makes you holding back, right? Because if you think, oh, I've already got what I need, now I need to let something. I need to leave something for the rest, right?
Yes. Yes. And I think language is super influenced by culture too. For example, I was thinking about the word ambitious, which in the English context generally is negative, but if we translate it literally into Spanish, it's neutral, for example. So yeah, that's also something to take into account.
Yeah.
And
in Indonesia, we don't have so the Indonesian language doesn't have a word for risk.
Yes, I
So
remember.
the word risk has been introduced by the Dutch or by the Portuguese. I don't know, risiko, right? So
Yeah.
it's
I think it's
not an
Dutch.
Indonesian
They
word.
told me. I don't know what's the word, but yeah,
But it's
they
not,
don't have
so
it.
there's no word for risk.
Mhm.
So if you don't have a word for risk, how can you be risk aware, right? So
You
it
don't have
doesn't
the concept.
they don't have the concept.
Yeah. Yes. I remember actually during one of our, remember those sessions that we did, lunch and learn? By the way, the sandwiches, the Vietnamese sandwiches were amazing. I remember those.
Fun, yeah, they still are.
Yes. And I remember there I was talking to one of the managers and he told me about that. I didn't know about that Indonesian didn't have the word risk in the language. Yeah. So yes.
Yeah, language is very important, and that's what drives me crazy when I read media, when I listen, because it creates, actually, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you start talking about conflict, there will be conflict, because the focus is on that. And you see that now with all the arms races, right? So the defense budgets or defense industry budgets are going through the roof, right? So, and everybody is talking about drones and tanks and you name it. So, and so if we talk about conflict, there will be conflict. If we buy arms, we will use them. Yeah. It's because you have it lying around. Oh, what should I do? I just pick it up, right? So, and then I throw it at somebody, right? So, but if we talk about peace, we will have peace because the mindset is there. Because when we talk about peace, the perspective is to how do we get or preserve peace. Yeah. So if I say, so in the Western world now is, right? So China, the enemy is China. The future enemy is China. So then you start looking at that. But it's also, so I just had a conversation last night. I was on a networking event, and I talked with a potential client, right? And the story is this: you have a new boss, and this boss is a certain personality, right? And now you behave differently, right? So let's say alpha type, and then you are maybe more on a more sensitive person, right? Seeking for harmony, right?
Yes.
So now that person is looking at you and saying, oh, you are not a good leader. Because for that person, being a driver, very dominant, a alpha kind of type, right, is what true leadership is. And somebody who is more soft, more looking more for harmony and things, right, is maybe not, right? So now, the label is there. So there, on the one-on-one conversation, there is now the tension, okay, because there's a feedback, you are not a good leader. I want you to be more whatever alpha or whatever it is, not so soft, right? So don't be with your team. So, but that's only between the two people, right? But what now happens with this alpha person, the alpha person will always look at you and look for things reconfirming, right? Because we're always looking for confirmation bias, right? Reconfirming that you are a weak leader. So everything now, because now you're on the spotlight, everything will be put into that context. Now, if that leader, if that boss is now talking to others and sharing, that person is not a good leader because, right? Could be because you make mistakes, could be because of your personality or the way or you do things, right? Other people will start looking at you. And if that's being repeated, so meaning if it's a one-off statement, maybe you just shrug it off. But if there is constantly the reminder or, right, so or the, oh, this one is bad, this one is bad, this one is bad, other people will start looking for bad, not for good.
Yeah.
It's a process, and so that works in organizations, right? Somebody is being labeled. Getting rid of this label is super difficult because there is this perception, and then there is the communication, and then everybody is kind of just looking at the bad things and not looking at the change, right?
Yeah.
And that's where that's where I'm doing a lot about conscious leadership, right? So where I work with leaders, and I also have on Instagram, I have daily prompts for conscious leadership, and on LinkedIn, daily prompts on conscious leadership, to just shift the focus on where am I contributing to, maybe not so good outcomes, and maybe where do I need to step back, and what can I do in order to shift the culture, in order shift the perspective, in order to allow somebody to grow and maybe perform. Yeah, because if we label the person as an underperformer, or we label the person as somebody who is powerful, or whatever the label is, right?
Yes.
We tend to look exactly for that, and then we get it reconfirmed and reconfirmed and reconfirmed, and that puts the person into a box which is difficult to get out of.
Yeah.
Right? And when we look at a larger scale, then it creates all sorts of effects. Right?
Yes. Yes. It happens. And I was thinking, when what we also have been talking before, that about peace, right? When you mentioned that, how difficult it is sometimes, even with good news, when you have to give good news to people. It's like, I have to give you a good news and a bad news, and everyone will stick with the negative. Yeah, right. It's kind of also difficult for us humans to be able to detach from the negative, right? And we have to make an effort in order to stick to the good part, stick to the peace in this case, stick to the good labels, we can say. Yes, so that has to be conscious, as you are saying. It has to be conscious, and we have to remind ourselves of the good things in order to focus on that. It happens to me all the time, right?
No, it's how we are wired. So meaning humans as a species need to survive, right? So meaning you as an individual, you need to survive, right? So what do you need for survival from an I forgot the word. So anyway, so what do you need to survive? You need to remember the bad things which happening. So you are eating something, it's poisonous, right? You're getting sick from it. You remember that, right? So next time you don't eat it. So you do something, something negative happens, right? You need to remember that in order to avoid that in the future. Something good happens to you, it's not relevant for survival, right? You don't survive if you remember all the good stuff. You survive if you remember all the bad stuff.
Yeah.
So that's why our brain is wired to remember the bad stuff. And there's a lot of studies, right? This is how it works, that when you hear negative news, one time you shrug it off, second time you shrug it off, but it sticks. And at some point, it's really shaping your beliefs, your worldviews, and so forth. And one personal realization I had in Allianz, right, or in the corporate world, was, we were forced to change our passwords every so many days, right? So meaning every 90 days we need to change our passwords. And I was frustrated about something. And then there was this time where I need to change my password. So I changed my password into, this really sucks, right? So I want to have safe passwords. My passwords are always kind of sentences, right? So I changed my password into, this really sucks, right? Okay, I thought, it's funny, right? So I changed my password in, this really sucks, right? But then what happened was, how many times do I log in to my computer every day, right?
Yeah.
100 times, because I go here, it locks. I go there, it locks, right? So every time, this really sucks. This really sucks. This really sucks. wow, I had so much negative energy, and I did at the beginning. I didn't realize that was from just logging in, right? Because you log in, you don't do right, and I don't even, right? So when I type my password, it's on my mind. I don't say it, right? But I paraphrase it in my thoughts, right? So
Yes.
it sucks, and I can hear my inner voice, right? This really sucks. This really sucks. This really sucks, right? And then at some point I realized, oh, it's this password, right? So you come in the morning, you're in a good mood. By 2 hours later, it's kind of. And then, oh shit, the password, right? So that's what's happening here. So I changed and from then onwards, I changed my password into something uplifting. So now I always have uplifting passwords, or passwords which are related to habits. Yeah, habits I want to. So do a push-up, smile, say thank you to somebody, right? Passwords like that, because that's uplifting, and it gives me energy. Yeah, because our brain, when there is negativity, it picks it up like a sponge.
Yes, imagine you can frustrated with something you have to solve, and then you have to enter into a computer and put something that's negative. It doubles the frustration or the bad energy that you have. Yeah.
And that's why it's so important so that's also why so important when I work with my clients now, and also before when I was working with teams, or right in my leadership role, to shift the focus and the perspective onto the other side, right? So rather than what is frustrating, what is working? What is draining? What is energizing?
Yeah.
Where am I using words which have a negative connotation or a kind of unpleasant? So negative and positive is judgmental, right? Maybe have an unpleasant or pleasant connotation. Can we shift it to the pleasant connotation? It changed so many things, right? And then maybe to the aspect of how can we change the world, right? Of course, I cannot change the global world, right? Because I'm just one person and I don't have a voice. But I have a voice, right? I have a voice for myself, so I can tell myself things. I can be true to my values. I can speak up about what I don't like. I can make posts of and talk to my friends and create awareness about the conflict language, which is ubiquitous. I can emphasize on non-violent communication, and try myself to use non-violent communication, be more compassionate. But what I can do is and I have been cancelled by groups of friends because of doing that, because it's too much. But I still think I need to do that because I want to have a better world, not a terrible world. And what I do for myself, right? And if I change, it changes the surroundings, right? So if I change, the world around changes. So I cannot control anybody else. I cannot make anybody else change. But if I change how I behave, if I change my perspective, it will change the dynamics. And by changing the dynamics, something good will happen. And so when we were working together in Allianz, we created these bubbles, right? It was all bottom up.
Yes.
Was all bottom up, and it started just with a handful of people, and 8 years later it was 450 people, cross-functional, cross-departmental, being in that bubble. Yeah. So that's maybe a message to everybody out there who is kind of giving up on, what can I do about this world? Just stay true to your values. Try to influence things, be a good person, be a good human. Don't judge the other person because they're behaving in a certain way. Understand that we all have our background and our circumstances, and many times we don't see how we can how we can act differently. It's kind of, we feel we need to behave in a certain way. And some of that is past conditional trauma. which makes us work in certain ways or behave in certain ways. So it's not the person is evil or bad. It's just in certain situations people cannot behave differently. So we need to show, we need to also be compassionate with that, and then show them ways to that it's possible to behave differently.
Yes. Sometimes circumstances or the way, for example, I've known leaders that they have changed their behavior for the good, we could say, or for a more pleasant way of working, and they have just learned to be that way because that was the thing that in the past have helped them get to the point they were now, but they didn't realize they could change that at the moment. So the circumstances also can vary from,
So what I've realized about myself, for example, my behavior was, we talked about the default behavior when you are feeling threatened, right? So my default behavior is freezing. So my brain goes blank, right? So I freeze. So that was my default behavior. And because of my childhood experience, I was bullied at school. I was beaten up by my father, not excessively, but right. So you get the beating, and then you are an outcast and being bullied in school. So whenever I felt pressured, right, I withdraw. My behavior was, if there is pressure, I withdraw. And if I'm challenged, I freeze, right? Because that's my default kind of fear response, right? I freeze. So now looking back into, so now I mentioned that I'm divorced, right? So I look back into my relationships, right? And out of the 5 long relationships I had, right, 4 leading up to my marriage and then my marriage, right? So what happened is, when I challenged, I withdrew. And when I was heavily challenged, I froze, so I couldn't respond. So that's why 4 out of 5 relationships, the women ended, not because I'm a difficult and bad guy, but because I withdrew, and then keeping over the time more distance. So at least that's my interpretation, right? More distance, and because I wasn't able to act and respond in certain situations. And because my pattern was withdrawing, I didn't pick up the communication afterwards, right? So because then, and then there is more pressure because, right? So the person needs something, your partner needs something. It's like a spiral, right? And why do they break up with me? Yeah, because I can be in that state longer than they can.
Yes.
Yeah. So meaning what I realize now is, when I feel pressured, I realize, oh, now I feel pressured. Before I didn't realize it was kind of because then I was immediately triggered and then I froze and stuff, right? So, so now I realize I'm pressured, and then I have learned how I can respond differently so that I don't get triggered. And if something comes up which needs to be addressed, which makes, so I have these difficult conversations. Before I was avoiding these difficult conversations. Now I'm having these difficult conversations, right? And because I have the difficult conversations, I have now different relationships.
Yes.
And I can stay close, and I can be with the discomfort, and I can be pressured, right? And but it took me 40 years or maybe 35 years to realize that, and to link it to what happened to me in primary school and what happened in secondary school, and what happened to me in the early lives, in my early years of childhood, right? And I've processed a lot of these things, right? But and they shaped me who I am, right? So and I'm grateful for, so I'm actually grateful for the experience, because me being having my values and my truths and staying to that and focusing on humans is originating a lot from that, right? So it didn't break me, it shaped me who I am. Yet it took me 35 years to connect some dots, right? Oh, that you have processed, but basically here there is still some link. And how do I break that?
And now
And
you
then I
you also have the tools in order to do that, to connect the dots. Sometimes you don't even know you have something to connect. That also happens. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I've been always good in connecting dots, but then connecting your own dots is difficult, and that's why I've worked with counselors in my life. Right? So when I was in a difficult situation, I thought, okay, I need to get some other perspective. I worked with some counselors to understand my past better, right?
Yeah.
And when I got into my C-suite, so CIO role, I had a coach to navigate the things I thought might be difficult because I hate politics. And if you are in an executive leadership role, there's always politics. So I thought, you know, and then is different relationships than if you're having an engineering or meaning department head, yes, but more focus on engineering and maybe people transformation, things like that, like technical transformation and collaboration perspective. So I thought I need to have a coach, and I find it really important to sometimes to realize, yes, you can do a lot of work by yourself, but sometimes it's really beneficial to have somebody external to play it back to you and ask you these kind of thought-provoking questions and showing you your blind spots.
Yes.
Right? Because we have blind spots.
Yes, yes.
And
I
our
totally
personal
agree.
development,
Yeah.
our personal development never stops unless we stop.
Yes, because new challenges, when you think you have something figured out, a new challenge comes, and then you have to restart and learn new things, new tools maybe, or connect different dots, or you thought, oh, this dot is with this dot, but then you realize there's a third one that you have to connect with. Yeah, it is like that, life in general. And that is when, for example, a perspective like yours as a coach, or myself, I'm a coach, but we also need sometimes the help of others, right?
Yeah, I have. So since I'm working as a coach, and actually it started with my coach education, because then you need to have a mentor, because the International Coaching Federation requires, okay, you need to be mentored, but there's only a limited amount, a certain amount of hours, right? And many coaches stop after that to be mentored until they want to reach the next level of certification, and then they need to be mentored or supervised again. So, but I have a coach mentor and I have a coach supervisor, and I meet every month. So because and the difference is between mentoring and supervision is the mentoring is about the skills of coaching, so the capabilities, coaching competencies, and supervision is about how coaching influences my life, how my life influences coaching and other aspects. Because and it's originating from the mental health care space, because if you work with people who are, you know, on mental health care issues, there's a lot of heavy stuff hitting you, right? So having somebody who is severe trauma or whatever, right? So there's a lot of stuff hitting you, and that might impact you. You need to navigate that. So that's why in mental health care, it's mandatory to have that. In coaching, depending on which coaching organization or association you are certified with, it's not yet mandatory, but it becomes more and more. So I work on a monthly basis. I bring things to the attention of my mentor, and so I have mentor on the coaching skills, and I also have a supervisor, and then I can reflect on these dynamics, right? So it's really important if you work in the human space, or in the space which serves humans, to take care of yourself. Because you can only take care of others if you take care of yourself. And then sometimes it's difficult to take care of yourself, because it feels selfish to take a break. Or if you have a helper syndrome, right? So because many people in the helping space, they just want to help, right? And
yes, actually, now I remember about a friend of mine that she's in the working with people, helping them be more healthier. And she said I had to stop for some time because it was getting to me, right? Because she didn't have the time or she took too many patients and she didn't take care of herself. So she had to stop for 1 year or so in order to just be better herself. So yes, you have to take care of yourself first and then you can help others. Yeah, that's true.
One interesting aspect is when I decided to step out of my corporate role, I and become a full-time coach. I was taking some entrepreneur courses because it's different skills required, right? And the first module of or the first practice in this entrepreneurial course is taking care of yourself as a foundation. Because if you embark on an entrepreneurial journey, you have your ups and downs, and things will not work. And you will have some self-doubt, and so you need to have your support network. You need to make sure that you take care of yourself, and it's and that this applies to everybody, right? So because when I'm working now with leaders, what I'm seeing, maybe because of the economical situation here in Indonesia and Asia, but also because of the insecurities and the uncertainty, right? The uncertainty on the global stage, right? Because you don't know what is happening tomorrow and impacts whatever your business you are doing, or maybe also just your environment, right? So your safety. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and what I'm seeing a lot in the last 2 years is predominantly executive leaders, but also the lower ranks going into burnout. Heavy leadership fatigue, especially when have all these downsizing moves, right? So downsizing the organization, fewer people, more pressure on the leadership. So there's a lot of leadership fatigue. There's a lot of burnout. There's a lot of relationships, so leadership relationships which get broken. So basically, you and your boss, and then it's maybe, or you and your headquarter. And then and then what's happening there? What was quite surprising for me is how quickly you can get into burnout. It just takes a few months, right? So you can be perfectly fine, and within 3 months you are in a bottomless hole, and you are really deep in burnout and depression. Because especially for executive leaders, right? You have been successful. And you have autonomy, you have confidence, you have authority, you have all these things. And when your relationship with your stakeholders, right, with your boss or with the headquarters goes sour, right, what happens is there might be toxic behavior. Now they micromanage you. They take away your authority to take decisions, or they want to get involved in every decision making. They maybe blame you in front of others, right, with the other executive leaders. So basically, they are demolishing or taking away the foundation your personality and your self-worth is standing on. And if that is taken away, and you're not aware that what is happening, you can quickly fall into a bottomless hole. And that's why currently I see so many leaders who are throwing the towel because they realize, hey, I cannot sleep anymore. So all signs of burnout, right? They basically pull the plug themselves because they see, if I stay here longer, it will kill me, literally, right? So, and I need to get out of that. So they take that decision, or they are being managed out because the trust and confidence in their capabilities is zero, and then they're being managed out, getting a golden handshake, and out you are. Is so many cases, and it's not just here in Asia. I have been reaching out to my network and to see if it's just something which is happening here.
Here is the same.
The numbers were going up. It's a global phenomena. But what happens in most times is that the people only come forward after they are already in deep shit, right? So after they are already in this hole, in the situation. And I can only ask everybody out there, make sure, especially executive leaders, make sure you have mentors which are outside of your organization, because once things go sour within the organization, you don't feel safe anymore. So you stop talking, right? So have somebody outside to have conversation. Maybe have a sounding board and a coach, which kind of allows you to have your self conversation when things feel off early on. So basically realizing the early warning signs, or incorporate some reflective practices like journaling or meditation or something, so that you are more aware when things feel off. Because at the beginning, everybody I had a conversation with, they can pinpoint, the window, the period where things started to, where things changed. But they left it, where I thought, I figure it out. It's not so important. And if it just takes 3 months from happy, powerful, successful leader to burn out, or severe physical signs like low energy, no motivation, sleep problems, right? Snapping on your spouse, your children, or whatever, right? If you experience that, it's something you need to work on, right? So please,
yes. Yes, and as you said, it also goes with you. These things go out with you and get into your home too. So yeah,
it's all connected. It's all connected.
Yeah. Well, so you are available in case people are having these symptoms
of course,
to help them.
Yes, and so what I'm doing is I'm having a lot of conversations, just to be there. So of course, right? So I need to make a living, so it's good to get clients. But I'm having a lot of conversations with people just to understand their concerns and then listen, because many people don't have somebody to listen to. And if they are open to work with somebody, it's good. Many can then also, once they have some clarity, they have the network. So basically they can talk with family and friends. They realize, now I need to do something about it. And then they have the capability and the capacity to do it themselves, right? Some benefit from, right? Because there are situations where I think everybody has experienced situations where some support was needed, right? But we also have experienced many situations, once we had clarity, we could handle it by ourselves. So meaning, if anybody wants to have a conversation, just reach out. We can have a conversation, and then we see how to move it from there. The other thing I have been doing, and I will do more, is I'm launching some self-assessment tools. So it's basically assessments on the internet. So the first one is out now. I'm staggering it so that it's not 20 assessments and then nobody knows what. So it's basically, so I have a few things in the pipeline. The first thing is out. It's called Sand in the Gearbox Assessment.
I can put the links if you provide them.
And this one is about figuring out what basically is from an organizational perspective, where in your organization things are working smooth or not working smooth. And it's predominantly about collaboration and communication. So individual contributions, cultural contributions, and systemic or process contributions. Takes 4 minutes. And then you get a ranking. Okay, there is no sand in my gearbox, or there is a lot of sand in my gearbox. And then of course there is and it provides you with some insights what you can do about it, and where your focus should be based on the results, right? And because some people, they find it difficult to have these conversations because it's an effort, right? And then you need to admit that something is wrong. And even if you have that, right? So we are all humans, and sometimes we know something feels off, but we don't want to admit it to ourselves. And then talking to somebody is really difficult, right? Because how do I look if I share that something is broken or what is wrong with me, right? And that's why I'm now launching a lot of these tools, so that you just fill a quick questionnaire, and then you get some answers, and then you maybe you get some confirmation. Oh yes, there is something off, and then we can have a conversation.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes. So I will provide the links. I will leave the links if you give them, if you have a web page or anything you want to share. LinkedIn for sure. So yeah, perfect. Well, I guess I've taken too much of your time. Sorry, Joerg, for
worries.
that. But
I
it's
enjoyed
really
the
great
conversation. I hope I
conversation.
didn't. So I enjoyed the conversation. I hope I didn't talk too much because
No, it's
some
perfect.
of these topics are at the bottom of my heart. And then I can get really kind of excited about it.
Yes, and I hope we can talk a little bit more frequently, just the two of us to catch up. We do actually, because you always we are always at least when at the holidays, this kind of things, you always connect or send me pictures or things about how's Jakarta or Bali or the places you're going, and I also follow you on LinkedIn. So we are kind of connected, but we haven't had a chat in a long time. So yeah.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, it's a global village, right? So we are in a global village, and I think it's important to stay connected, and especially with those of who are kind of sharing same values, but so turning the world into a better place. And thanks for inviting me, and I hope what we have discussed, or the conversation, is relevant for your audience and the people you are interacting with.
Yes, we all have something to learn from you. So terima kasih. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Adios.
Bye.
Stay tuned for Uluwa's next episode.